Hello, I'm Straz, and welcome to Amateur Hour. Today, we're looking at a game from the Ubisoft Gaming League, an internal league at Ubisoft, on Tomb of the Spider Queen. As we jump in, we can see that the blue team has been putting a ton of pressure on the red team despite having way less kills. Diablo is going to spot the red team trying for this boss, but he isn't going to do anything about it by himself. Blue team's Tyrande is dead, meaning that at the best this is a 4v5. Even still, I think this would have been worth challenging. While I wouldn't want it all in here, I think they could have pressured them into backing off at the very least. It's also worth pointing out that while you don't see it in this clip, they were being very obvious that they were motioning towards the boss. Blue team knew about it before Diablo even spotted it, which was the reason he was there in the first place. Regardless, they're going to pick up the boss and they're going to leave it so they can go for a turn-in. Diablo's going to immediately start working on it in a pretty safe way. Likewise, you're going to see Raynor come up here to help dispatch the boss as well. Thrall does his best Exorcist impression here, screaming "the power of Rhaegar compels you" at Diablo. Unfortunately for Thrall, this is basically an entirely wasted ult, as Diablo just completely backs up and his team wasn't really around to help him with that anyway. The only thing the red team is doing with this boss is using it as a distraction so they can turn in, but I honestly think that's a pretty big waste. Speaking of waste, Falstad's ult here literally does nothing. It honestly doesn't even slightly affect the blue team. I'm going to drop a pause here so we can talk about the beginning of this team fight. So there's a lot to talk about here. First off, the red team is overeager to engage in this team fight. Both Thrall and Falstad have used their heroics, and both teams are on the same talent tier and level. The red team is also pushing ahead of their minion wave, and their boss was just dispatched, so the blue team can solely focus on them and nothing else. Finally, while the red team has their web weavers approaching, they aren't going to be around to help with this team fight, and even if they were, they will only be pushing one lane, as blue waves are pushed up far in both mid and bottom lanes. All of these variables mean that this is a very poor engage for the red team. It's also worth mentioning that it's 22 minutes in, both teams are past 20, and red has an exposed core. They need to play safe. They can't afford to lose a big engagement. Diablo begins his fight by charging in. He's trying to suplex Uther, but Uther gets a stun on him, preventing this from happening. At the same time, Diablo's been a little overeager with his engage, and he's pushed up a little too far from his team. This prevents his team from being able to follow up on any of the damage he's doing. Shadowstalk and Apocalypse are popped, Diablo's gonna die, and a second Apocalypse is gonna proc immediately on his death. These two stuns, combined with the damage of the rest of his team, is actually going to put a ton of damage on Thrall, and you're going to see that Uther has to Divine Shield him. Diablo's dead, but his trait means he's going to be back here soon, so Sonya decides to keep pushing, especially considering that overall, their health is much better than the red team. Both Ring of Frost and Maw go down here, but only Ring of Frost manages to hit anyone. Tyrande and Zagara are going to get rooted, and Zagara is going to take a ton of damage from the combined power of the red team. While Storm's shield and Tyrande's heal is going to make sure she lives a little bit longer, she is not a tank, and Thrall's going to quickly blow her up with a Wind Fury. While it seems like all might be lost for the blue team, Sonya's in the back lines doing a hell of a lot of damage. As she takes out Jaina, you're going to see that Thrall's actually going to get taken out by the combined power of Raynor and Tyrande. Since Diablo's trait was up, he's immediately back into this fight, and things just completely turn around, and now it's the red team that's in big trouble. The red team needs to back off here, but instead they're going to try and get this kill on Sonya. This is going to be the end for them, as you can see Joanna's health drops as well as Uther. Diablo drops Uther right into a coffin, and he dies almost immediately. While Tyrande does land an owl onto Falstad, he's going to manage to get away here. The blue team, in response, is going to chase after Uther instead, as they know he's going to respawn immediately because of his trait, and they're going to kill him. All of a sudden, it's a 4-on-2. Now I'm pausing here because I want you to think about what you would do in this situation. Take a look at the minimap, take a look at how much time you have, just take it in for a second. I want you to play along with me here. Just pause the video and think this out loud. What would you do? You have an answer? Alright, good. Here are the things that I think the blue team could do in this situation. They have about a 40-second window to make something happen. That's a lot of time in Heroes of the Storm, and so we have a few possibilities. There is one keep left, and it only has a sliver of life remaining, so they could easily go for that and take it out. Likewise, Joanna and Falstad are the only ones up to defend anything. They could go hard here and probably do a lot of damage to the core. Even if they don't finish it, simply doing damage to it and having catapults pushing in all lanes will allow your team to bully the other quite a bit. After all, no matter what they're doing, if you threaten core, they have to back. It also makes any web weaver push from your side incredibly dangerous. If you have a push going with catapults and web weavers, you're going to be able to damage core. And if you have 5 people left, even if they have 5 people alive, if you can push that a little, you're going to win the game. Finally, if the blue team is feeling conservative, they can go after the enemy's camp and invade it and take it without really any kind of risk whatsoever. As we unpause this, I'm gonna let you in on a secret. The blue team is going to do none of those things. They choose to take out the web weavers, which I don't think is a bad call, especially since this late in the game it doesn't take a whole lot to kill them. As the web weavers go down, however, they don't really push this advantage at all. Despite getting a ton of kills and a pretty big lead here, they don't really do anything with it. In fact, they're going to do something that I personally think is probably one of the worst things they can do in this situation. As this plays out, you're going to actually see them go for their own camp. That's going to allow the enemy to get theirs, which means that both are just going to meet each other and nothing is going to happen. Now I know some people are probably watching this and going, well no, what they were clearly doing here is just picking up a bunch of coins so they can get a big turn in. The thing is, you can always see how many of them you have, and you can figure out how many are going to drop since you know how many spider spawns in each lane. Quick glance at the minimap would have let the blue team know that there was no way they were going to get that big turn in here, and there are better things to do with their time. Now while the blue team does eventually win this game, they have to wait for another mistake on the red team in order to do that. I think if they would have taken that keep and gotten that enemy's camp, they probably would have won this game a lot faster. So let's talk about some takeaways in this game. First off, the point we were just making. If you have an advantage in Heroes of the Storm, you have to push that advantage. In this case, the blue team had a very clear and distinct advantage, yet they didn't really do anything with it. By failing to capitalize here, they were giving their opponents just a huge window to come back in. You can't do that. If you have a chance to go at the core or take down another keep or anything like that, you need to take it. The second takeaway here is about wasted heroics. Heroics are a resource just like mana and health. If you're entering a team fight with half health or half mana, you probably can figure out that you're at a disadvantage. Likewise, if you enter a team fight without heroics up, you are entering at a disadvantage. Falstad and Thrall both use their heroics in a very silly way. Thrall was never going to kill Diablo with that, and certainly he wasn't starting a good team fight for the rest of his team. Falstad's Gust doesn't really do anything either, it just kind of pushes their team back to the fort, which honestly is kind of a good thing for them. Be as tactical as you can when you're using your heroic abilities. Don't just throw them away for no reason. Remember, when you're throwing away an ability like that, you're taking away a lot of your character's utility in a team fight. Finally, my last takeaway in this video is this. Once again, Heroes of the Storm is a game about team fights, but it's not a game about taking every team fight that's put in front of you. The team fight that opens this video should have never happened. There's no reason for the red team to engage in the fight. If you have an advantage, for example, a boss pushing, or web weavers, or you're at up a talent tier, or you know they have all their heroics blown, that's a good time to begin a team fight. I guess that actually brings me to another point here. Getting the boss shouldn't just be a distraction for you to accomplish something else, it should be a method that you use to help win the game. I agree with their call to use it to get the spiders, I just think that it should have happened a little bit faster so they could have had a dual push going on. Instead, they waste the boss and then their spiders don't really get to join the fray before they're completely wiped out anyway. That's it for this episode of Amateur Hour. As is usual, if you thought it was helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. And yes, we are still looking for submissions. Feel free to submit your replay to the email in the description. Once again, this is Strass, and I'll see you next week.